Well, it appears that we are live. This is WVU football.
Well,
going deep.
It appears that.
And I suppose the live comment is true, if somewhat marginal in my case. But I am fully excedrinated, so I should be able to run with you guys for a while. Not that we are yet overloaded with folks in the studio watching with us. We'll do a little news and housekeeping before we get into the main part of the show, and I am hoping this will be a very interactive show. I have some questions about what folks thought about the past season and the upcoming spring, a little bit about the 2024 season, but it's kind of far out to be talking too much about that season. There's a lot that can and will happen between now and then. Of course, some of the news is Durajawe entering the portal, which was unexpected and bad news. It does currently look like we have a very good chance of landing portal signee for the defensive line replacement. I believe it's TJ Jackson, some initials in Jackson, who was an all-conference player out of Troy. And of interest, one of the folk who submit for the top 25 has West Virginia and Troy in the top 25, which is kind of like Neil Brown having two teams in the top 25, even if he hasn't coached at Troy in quite some time. But it is interesting, and I'm sure we will hear more about his Troy days this season as we have in season past. I know it bugs some people, but I'm not among them. We do have a cornerback out of Liberty that we've offered. West Virginia was his first offer. Would be a very good get. But we're also at that point where we can't say you'll get playing time or start. We can only say you'll get a chance. We have some very good people at corner. Still not clear what will happen with Miller, but corner is not a wide open position. And even the guys we've signed, hey, between Miller and Spells, it may be current players filling those starting spots. But we sure need depth at that position. And Rhonda Reed, good to see you here. I am a Mountaineer transplanted in Indiana. I think in Tennessee you have the advantage on me. Southwestern Indiana is not in my top 10, 20, or 30 choices for where I would be transplanted, but this is where we ended up for various reasons, and would like to make it back to hill country, even if I only grew up in the western foothills of West Virginia along the Ohio. Tonight's video, I'm going to talk a little bit about my review of the 2023 season, specifically looking at what I think we learned about the team each game. It's a lot of games, so just going to run through that quickly. And then I will also be asking for input from folks here. And here, I'll give this to you as a lead in. You can think about this while I'm running through the season. And also, if you think there's something particular that we learned from one of the games that I don't mention, and obviously I'm not going to cover everything or even close, so I just post your thoughts as we go. But this is the first big question of the night that we'll get to. Now, in terms of what I'm thinking about the season, Penn State, well, one thing we learned was there was trouble in the defensive backfield. Neither Wilson Lamp nor Spells was as good as they seemed in the offseason. So that was a big hit. We recovered, but it still hurt us the whole season, really. And we learned that Greene could throw the deep pass. We kind of knew that, and it didn't really get much mention because we lost the game. But Greene threw sweet, deep passes in the Penn State game, and that was a nice thing to find out early and get confirmed later in the season. The Duquesne game was goodbye to Wilson Lamp. He started that game and then dropped off the defense entirely, relegated to special teams. And it was hello, Hudson Clement. We learned that not only did we have something special in Clement, but he was a little more ready than the fans thought. And I think even more ready than the coaches thought. They knew he was coming, but they didn't know he was that ready. Pitt, we learned that we could win without Garrett Greene. And we didn't have to go through that much of the season, but it was good to know. Marchiol was not spectacular at quarterback, but he managed the game. We won 2 games with Marchiol. So we could win with Greene, or we could win without Greene, which also tells us if we have to, we can win without Greene in 2024. And certainly hoping that we will see backup quarterbacks in mop-up duty, but it would be nice if we're not losing Greene for entire games. Texas Tech, we learned about the grind and grit and Marcus Floyd. We saw the grind and grit against Duquesne, against Pitt, really confirmed it against Texas Tech, and Tech was Marcus Floyd's coming out party. He'd been injured for the first couple of games, but putting him in as a essentially spear nickel combo and blitzing. Marcus Floyd had a knack for blitzing. He didn't know it. The coaches didn't really know it. And we learned it, and enjoyed it. The TCU game, we learned about the heart that the team had. And if we didn't already know it, we learned about the importance of special teams. The heart, we saw the heart in the grind and grit, but against TCU, we saw 2 key players go down in ugly ways. Fortunately, Burke's injury was not as bad as it looked. Lathan's was. And the team held together, played hard, won the game. Against Houston, we learned how important Lathan was. I mean, there's no denying Cutter's good. And we knew Lathan was good. But I think a lot of the pass coverage problems, and also, I mean, for that matter, problems overall, were because we did not have Lathan with that extra year of experience, being able to bounce back and forth with Koba, and possibly being better in pass defense. I do think that is why we started having more problems with pass defense, not having a linebacker who did a better job of dropping back into the lanes. Oklahoma State would just as soon skip the Oklahoma teams, but you learn from your losses, or you darn well better. We learned about the importance of momentum. Heaven knows we were winning. Wilson Lamp, bad special teams play. Momentum shifts. We are suddenly on the desperate defensive, going for some zero blitz with inexperienced players. We did not have Burks back at that point, and they made mistakes. Oklahoma State took advantage of them. Cannot overemphasize the importance of the mental game. It's easy to talk about physical talent. The mental game wins or loses as many games as physical talent does. UCF. We learned that Beanie Bishop could catch. He had some interceptions before that. 2 in that game. He kind of forgot how to catch after that game, but we did see that he could catch. We saw that the defense could create turnovers overall. I think it was 4 or 5 turnovers in that game, more than we'd had in a long, long time, more than we had the entire 2022 season. So it wasn't consistent, but it was happening. BYU. We saw really what the defense could be. You say, when things went right and the defense was playing fast and loose and confident, yes, BYU had, several players out, including their primary receivers, but the defense played tighter, sharper, and faster in that game, and I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe it was, confidence from playing UCF, still some leftover anger from Oklahoma State. We had Burks back. Beanie Bishop said it was his favorite game. Not necessarily his best, but his favorite. So the defense had a lot more potential than we saw some of the time. Oklahoma, we learned that the team isn't there yet. We can beat good teams. This has been a problem each season, really. We don't beat the best teams. Garrett Greene, still Greene. Yeah, he's been in the program for a long time, but his playing time is still relatively low, and his ability to read defenses has improved, but needs to improve. Oklahoma was able to play some mind games with him, get him into some bad, habits in his reads. He's got to get past that. We won't be playing Oklahoma next year unless somehow it happens in a bowl game. But other teams are likely to watch that Oklahoma tape and try to figure out how to play mind games with Greene. Then we got the Cincinnati game. That was more enjoyable. One of the things we learned was the team is resilient. They don't get down and stay down. You go back, and I'm sorry, the Holgesen years, if the team got down, they had a hard time getting up. They did not have the same type of deep grit that this team has. And that's important because you're going to have bad games. Hopefully you win even when you play badly, but you're going to have bad games. And we learned what really happens when Jaheim White practices properly and consistently. 204 yards running. And I think, let's see, was that, his beautiful, his first beautiful catch that, he just snagged with his hands on the run, touchdown. So White can catch. We'd seen some of that, but we hadn't really seen it with something that sweet. And we learned what happens with Greene when the defense starts paying attention to somebody else. It was Greene's big game for both passing and running. Before, it was more of a tendency to be especially good at one and either not so good or okay at the other. In this game, we saw sort of the full-fledged potential of the offense. Now, still potential. The offense can and I think will be a lot better, but we saw something there that we want to see more of. And the team was dominant in that game. Baylor, we learned zero quit. The offense was getting smashed in the second half, but they did not quit. And we showed that they, had learned from the Houston game. Greene, beautiful throw to White, and he kept his helmet on. We end up with a Hail Mary, and Brown brought pressure, which got to the quarterback. And again, Marcus Floyd and that beautiful blitzing. We're going to miss him, but they are trying to come up with somebody who can do much the same. North Carolina, bowl game. We showed that we could win in different ways. The offense was not at its best. The running game was not at its best. And we kept playing, back to the grit, and we won. We proved that the defense can be dominant. Again, we saw that at times in the season, but we also proved that the defensive coaches can and will make good halftime adjustments. They did that. I mean, there were multiple games this season when the defense just shut the other guys down completely in the second half after having a not so good first half. So the ability to adjust, to be a good coach, we saw it. So I think that bodes well. Now we do appear to be losing one of those coaches in Dante Wright. The school has not made an official announcement, but it does appear that he has accepted the defensive coordinator position at Troy. And until the school makes it official, they won't officially announce a search or whether somebody on the team is, moving and we're going to replace them. We'll have to wait and see. I'm not too worried. I mean, I don't like having coach changes, but I do trust Brown to make a good hire. And I also think Brown is much more insistent these days on choosing who the coach is and not letting outside forces determine the choice. Yes, Linda Skidmore, being able to run the football solves a lot of problems. Being able to throw the football solves a lot of problems. But you have to be able to do either one when the other team knows you're going to do it. And we were not good enough at doing it under those conditions. We were better. And most of the time we were able to do it well enough to scratch out first downs, but that's not good enough. Now, when White came in, started playing well, we were able to spread defenses out more with his speed. Once he, got better at picking the gaps, the holes. And, well, I mean, that sucks. When Brown says we're a developmental program, he means taking high school players or young transfers and helping them develop to play at West Virginia. We are not some, farm school prepping players for everybody else. That's how we're getting used now. I suppose it's a compliment. We keep, losing these guys to the blue blood programs, and they frequently do well. So we are getting good players. We are developing them well. Retention has been better overall. And we're always going to lose some of these players if they really get big offers or think they can. And the difference in money is that important. I mean, I know some people think, hey, if you can make more money, go for it. I don't want to see money be that big a factor. But the SE schools, a lot of them just have more money, period, but they also have a better TV contract. So they have more money coming in on a regular basis. So there is a limit to how much you can compete under those circumstances. Durajaye may have just been somebody they had to say, okay, you want to go that route, go that route. Now, Vester Rennen actually announced just a little earlier today that he has signed with Country Roads Trust. I find it interesting that this announcement came so shortly after Durajaye entered the portal. There may have been a money issue between keeping both of them. I don't know that. I don't know what the issue was, if there was one, but losing Durajaye may have made it easier to keep Vestorinen. Of course, Vestorinen has less time and wouldn't necessarily want to transfer, and he's an established player. Durajaye was the promising, potential star, but that doesn't mean he would have fulfilled that promise. He progressed by working hard. Would he have continued to work that hard or harder? Don't know. We've seen we've seen Vestorinen. We know his work ethic. So if I did have to choose between those two, I would pick Vestorinen. But we shall see what happens. That definitely was a factor. Oklahoma, everything they did worked. West Virginia was off a bit on both offense and defense. Even Koba was, taking wrong, gaps and wrong angles. Oklahoma did not make mistakes. Okay, yeah, it took me a moment to figure out the part about taking 3 games to win. With the bigger bowl pool. I understand the reason for that. I'm not all that happy about how many games teams are going to be playing, how long it's going to run necessarily. In any given year, right now, how many teams do really have a chance at winning? It seems Georgia, Alabama, and maybe Michigan have been head and shoulders above the rest of the teams for several years now. We keep having teams fight over the 4th or maybe 3rd spot, but it's like, okay, we have a Cinderella team and they get crushed. Cinderella is not, if Cinderella makes it to the ball, she is not marrying the prince. Of course, depending on the prince, that may be a good thing. Anyway, that's my summary of what we learned. Looking now, it's like favorite, least favorite. So what are your favorite moments from this season and your least favorite? And I'm going to kind of go sideways on this. There are a lot of wonderful plays, wonderful moments. But I'm going to say for me, my favorite moment was every video of a walk-on being told they have a scholarship. I love how that's been handled the last few years. Clearly, the team loves how they're doing it. I'm a little sad because with the current scholarship situation, I don't know if we will have any scholarships to give to a walk-on this year. Usually we have at least 2. This year, maybe none. And there are walk-ons who already probably deserve a scholarship, much less, guys who will have earned that opportunity. Will that get them some NIL money? I mean, that is where the possibility of rewarding a non-scholarship player with, money for whatever, Um, but you can't exactly do a reveal video of, hey, we're giving you money. It's not a scholarship, but we're giving you money. That is not supposed to be going through the school, and it's not quite the same necessarily. And there may very well be some non-scholarship players who have some measure of an NIL deal. I can't think of anybody right now who would, but hey, maybe they do. It's probably something that will be happening in the future. Well, our audience is finally starting to grow a little bit. So I will repeat, first question of the night. What's your favorite or least favorite moment from the past season, not counting the Houston Hail Mary? I don't want to make it quite that easy. Although that game also taught us the old game of inches routine. If you watch that video over and over in some of the angles, there was a very, very small window which that ball could come down without getting tipped by one of three West Virginia players. And it came down right in that spot. There was no place else that ball could have thrown and not get tipped away. So, and I'm sorry, no quarterback has the skill to launch a pass up, that skyward and have it come down right, in that little gap. So it was a luck issue as well. Yeah, but as things stand, I think we still need 4 or 5 more players to leave before all of the players who are committed actually sign. Now, some will be coming, this semester, this month, and most of them will be coming in May. A few maybe later, but by the end of spring, we need to, have at least 5 guys into the portal of the ones who are currently there. Homesickness and family situation, yes. It's more commonly going to be playing time. And there are players I thought would already be gone, and they're not. Durajaye is the only one who's a big surprise. And I feel confident we can replace him. Both, with a short-term portal transfer and the young guys coming in. One of the things we learned, I forgot to mention in the bowl game, I think we saw a Sonny Redwood coming into his own. I love that, that sack he had late was just a beauty. Power, speed, and knowing your angles. But, we'll see. Well, we don't seem to have that much interest in the favorite and least favorite. So let me ask this. Who do you think will be the Beanie Bishop of 2024? That means, who is going to be the transfer player who really stands out, whether you say more than expected or just who is the best, the MVP transfer, who do you think it's going to be? We've got 6 guys committed so far, and a couple more that we might manage to add. Although I mean that we might manage to add soon. Let's see. These are the guys that are so far committed from the transfer portal. I'm going to cheat, actually. Yeah, I think Ty French could be big. I mean, if he's as good as hoped, then he'll be what we haven't had. That bandit who really puts the pressure on consistently. Bartlett did it erratically, and pressure, but didn't necessarily finish. I'm actually going to say Montre Miller. He's last year's transfer, but he didn't get to play. I think, I mean, he was considered a better, get than Bishop. Of course, there were reasons why Bishop was underrated. But Miller, as far as I know, he hasn't applied for a waiver as yet. So we don't know for sure that is going to happen. So I think, French may be the safest guess. Singleton is a possibility, but we have not gotten a commitment. I think he's supposed to visit here fairly soon. And they are not bringing in players to visit unless they think they have a really good chance of signing them. I didn't know that, there's a limit to the number of official visits. And turns out not only is there a limit, but West Virginia is close to that limit. Unlimited unofficial visits, but that means it's on the players' own money, and players don't necessarily want to do that. So, I mean, if we can get Singleton, it looks to be a really big get. But thing with cornerbacks right now is before we could tell the guys in the portal that they had almost a guarantee of playing time, lots of playing time, and a good chance to start. I don't think we can say that to Singleton. I think we can tell him he's got a good chance to earn playing time, but winning the starting spot at corner next year is going to be a pretty tight competition, which does mean depth should be better, but yeah. Is that, I'm not sure who you're referring to. But then again, I have not been paying a lot of attention to first names in many of these cases. I think the good thing is that even though it's a small list of transfers, you could almost point to any of them and say they've got a good shot. Bray may have the hardest track just because the wide receiver room is so full of talent and speed. So that's going to be a rough room to make a big impression in. Carrico, I mean, he's really, in many respects, the unknown because he didn't get playing time at Ohio State, but supposedly has the talent. We've got good linebackers, but they are young linebackers and coming back from injuries. So I could make an argument for Carrico being, the breakout, MVP. Crandall and Garnes are both good and a good chance that they can play in ways similar to what Floyd did. I think Crandall is a little bigger than Garnes, if I recall, so, would maybe be more suited to shift down to the spear nickel at times. Minkins was up and down at Louisville. But we're also, still looking, hey, may have that big breakout year. Maybe the guy who wasn't a star who becomes a star. You are not allowed to have more than 85 scholarship players enrolled at any moment, not for a second. If you're at 85 and somebody wants to enroll, they can't do it until somebody leaves. So that, again, that's why we have some time. We don't go over the 85 limit until most of the signed or committed players enroll. We've got a little bit of room, but we have to make room before all of those guys come in. Everybody tells me, hey, just, it'll work out. Guys will leave. And yes, I'm sure it will, but it is still a little nerve-wracking. You have to wonder if it's affecting recruiting. Right now we're looking at these guys and saying, hey, commit to us and we'll find a way to have a scholarship by the time you want to enroll. But if it's a choice between that and a school that says, hey, we've only got 84 scholarships committed, we know right now that there'll be a scholarship for you. So I don't rightly know. Well, let's try this question. We're going to have 4 scholarship quarterbacks. I think Wilkins is coming in early. I am not certain. Maybe not. So this may apply to spring. It may not apply until later. I expect Greene to get better, to be better with his reads, to be better in terms of the intermediate short passes, the touch. But does Marchiol improve enough to close the gap? Can we make it a competition? I think there was a little more difference between Greene and Marchiol than we wanted. Early in the season we saw Marchiol with the first team. Later it was just mop up when he was with the second string line and not necessarily good protection. But we need Marchiol to improve enough so that the gap gets close. So I think that's one of the big and not so much talked about stories coming up for spring. Will Marchiol close the gap with Boyle and Wilkins? I'm assuming it's between those two for the number 3 QB. I don't think either of them will pass Marchiol, and I don't think Marchiol will hit the portal. Boyle, I'm not sure about. But kind of curious what folks think about the quarterback situation. How do you think that's going to play out in the spring? Do you see Greene getting so much better that Marchiol is still a distant second? Or do you think we get not necessarily a real competition for number 1, but something close? And by the way, I was hoping that we would have a couple of special guests stop by. but it was dependent on their schedules. I did not hear back from Jordan at Country Roads webcast, and Coos from Coos's Corner earlier asked me how long I expected the live stream to last, which I took as a suggestion that he might show up if the live stream ran long enough, but I did not have confirmation of that. I was hoping to have one or both pop in for at least a little while, but that may not happen. And we aren't really getting a great deal of chatter. I kind of thought the questions would get a little more reaction. We've only got 3 out of the 10 people watching who have commented to questions or their own thoughts. So let's try something a little different. Who do you think is going to have the best season between Hudson Clement and Traylon Ray, whether it's number of catches, total yards, or both? I don't know. I mean, some people have commented on the boards that Clement seems to disappear until those 2-minute desperation drives, and Greene suddenly starts finding him, and Clement makes big catches and sometimes runs them for the touchdown. We saw that Houston and Baylor. Meant more at Baylor in the end, but Ray was getting some big catches. But of course, he also seemed to be spotty. Would have a big catch, or in one case had 3 catches in a row and then disappear. So I suppose we do need to be a little more consistent with some of what we do in the passing game. Of course, it's nice to hit a variety of receivers, but you do want to see a guy or two making plays throughout the game. Now, I do tend to think that Clement and Ray are the 2 primary choices for this question. If you think one of the other receivers, either one of the guys still already on the roster or one of the freshmen, we are signing some really good receivers. If you think somebody is going to surpass these guys, hey, let's hear about it. I'm up for that. As long as they surpass these guys, because they just had a super season and Clement and Ray only had really good seasons. Yeah, I think I was heading along those lines. We need, of course, now we've got Fox for clutch catches, especially clutch catches while falling down. He may hold the record for that particular statistic, which I don't suppose is recorded anywhere. But yeah, I mean, based on this season, yeah, Ray, I mean, they both had, in terms of the average per catch, they were both well up there. Run after catch as well, although Ray I don't think Ray had enough catches to necessarily say, of course, again, first play in the bowl game, we definitely had a catch and run for Ray. Would like to see a lot more of that. And Clement does have the history of clutch catches. But will not just the receivers, but as you say, with Greene, I think Greene has a rapport with Clement. It's part of why he goes to him in the clutch situations. And I hope he will build that with Ray. And I hope it will start showing by, spring. We don't get to see a lot of spring practice. We will see the spring game. I don't think they've set the actual date for that, but we're looking at 4 months, something like that. Seems far away and also very close. But, well, I guess evidently everybody agrees that it will be Ray having the yards and Clement the clutch catches. Let me ask you this. Which one is the bigger concern going into spring practice? Is it the O-line with Frazier gone at center and Nestor gone at right tackle? Currently, the assumption is Yates will be starting center, Hubbard left guard, and Malone Hubbard right guard, Malone right tackle. If you have thoughts on that, I'm curious to hear. But is it the biggest concern the O-line, or is it going to be the defensive backs again, since we are losing Ruffin and Bishop, both starters, and trying to replace them? Okay, well, there's the answer, but do you have some specific reasoning for that? Would like to know. As things stand right now, we have good quality signed for the portal, in the defensive backs. Not sure if there's one or two offensive linemen that we're looking seriously at in the portal right now. Guys who could come in and win the starting spot, but they are not currently committed. Some people are talking Altuner as a guy able to start as a freshman. I don't really like to see that. Of course, it's the question. With the offensive line, we have experienced players in Hubbard and Malone and Yates, and we have talented young players who have not yet played enough to prove themselves. So, Hubbard, Yates, and Malone all have to take a step forward in order to be good enough. And it would have to, we need above average guys at all three spots. We had 2 out of 3. Left, right guard was still a weakness on the line this year, and I think it hurt us. D-backs, we've got less experience. Well, because safety, we've got a ton of experience coming back. But the question remains depth. We've got Jackson and Tagaloa, who could step up after a year. But, that's of course, we've got more than 7 offensive linemen on the roster, but getting by just, using 7 regularly. We had a couple who got in during mop-up time, but I think it's, oh goodness, we've got a lot more than 7, and I think teams really want to have closer to 10. We were not able to substitute and give offensive linemen a break the way we did with the defensive line. I think we need to be able to do that. I'm not sure we will be able to do that next year. But with the D-backs, I like what we've got coming from the portal. again, will they be Bishop quality? It's that fast, fast switch, different conference, different defensive style. I think both will be okay by fall, but both have me a bit concerned because it does depend on guys stepping up. Not quite sure what you mean, Timothy Hall. No money problem for whom, and who doing what's best right for the program. Is that in terms of the Durajaye transfer or something else? Still interested here with the concerns. It doesn't seem people other run to read have any concern about them. Those were my areas of concern. I don't, but maybe I'm just hallucinating. Maybe I'm sitting here talking to myself and don't know it. Let me ask this question then. Who will be the Jaheim White of 2024? That means who's going to be the young player. Could be an incoming freshman. Could be maybe a redshirt freshman. Nobody who's been in the program more than a year. Who do you think is going to be the breakout? And that doesn't necessarily mean just offense, but who's going to come in and maybe do something as early as spring, like the spring game and Jaheim White's big touchdown run, to make us say, yeehaw, I want to see that guy play come fall. We've got a lot of young receivers and a lot of speed, a lot of receivers who could make just outstanding plays. We have 2 new running backs. We have Oliver, who will be in his second year, so he qualifies. It would be interesting to have both backs from last year turn out to be, the big impression of spring. Well, we're up to 11. I think that's the most we've had in here, but it is not a chatty group. I thought I had something really figured out that was going to get people just talking and shouting and insulting one another and all of that. And I don't think anybody had any caffeine except me before this program started. And I was kind of counting on you guys to carry the load tonight. I have managed to keep talking for almost an hour. We got into some good conversations in the last live stream, and was hoping for more of the same. That's why I came up with these question cards. Thought maybe if I put it on the screen, it would actually generate more activity. This could be the first time in my life I've actually made a mistake. Yeah, I thought I was wrong once, but it turned out I was mistaken. That has become one of my favorite. Well, is there something you guys want to cover that we have not covered? Kind of did the review, bit of preview, some of what I'm thinking. Of course, spring is not that far away before spring practice starts, but we'll have a lot happening between now and then. I did not see the did not see the interview with Altoona. Was that recent? I know he for the Under Armour game, he was considered one of the guys there most ready for college ball. I think he did well in the game, playing some at both center and guard, but I have not read the full story as yet. I spent my time writing up these stupid question cards. Let's see here. Let me just pop back to the regular. Now I've actually got to sit up straight when I'm in the full view. Oh, and did not brush my hair before I got on here. But yeah, Altoona is, by all, all recent, looks and comments, a top get. He does look to be, Frazier's replacement. Not this year, I don't think. I'm not convinced that Livingston will win the starting spot outright. Yates will win it outright. I think Livingston will come on to at least push him and may win the spot, if not the beginning of the season, then somewhere during the season. Yates, I like Yates. I like Hubbard. You listen to their interviews. They're both top guys. They have given the program everything they've got, and they have stuck with West Virginia. And I appreciate that, but they have not stepped up to the level that we need them to reach. I'm still hoping it will happen, but Altoona he's top quality. Expectation is that his rating will go up after the Under Armour game, although they don't always bother to go back and re-rate players because there are a whole lot more players than there are qualified or semi-qualified people to rate them. And while ratings are nice, and yes, oh gee, golly, we got this 4-star or that 4-star, but all I really care about is what do they do when they get here on and off the field. And that's where Brown has said improvement in recruiting has been figuring out who will do well in the program. Who is a good player, who's going to be a good player, who's a good person. Those are factors. But you can be a good player and not be good in the program. So if we are getting better at good in the program, things are going to keep going up. Well, I did not notice that, but it would be interesting. Wilkins is one of those guys. He wanted to come to West Virginia, and he still wants to be there. All indications are this kid is just dedicated to the program, to the game, and probably to the coaches. So I look forward to his development, and I do think he has a chance to become at least the number 3 quarterback. I know the coaches have liked what Boyle has done, but we don't get to see much of that. I mean, shoot, I don't think Boyle played a snap unless it was the Duquesne game. I don't think then. So we're not seeing what he does with the team. And he did not come in with the fanfare that Marchiol did. Wilkins isn't coming in with a lot of national fanfare, but significantly more fanfare among the fans than Boyle did. Of course, when Boyle came in, we weren't that concerned. We had Greene and Marchiol, and the only argument was which one of them was going to be the star. People tended to think one or the other of them would be big time. We're still hoping both of them are big time in their turn. I kind of thought that things were going to be slow in these weeks, but there is actually a lot going on and a lot not going on. Mostly we have chatter about who's visiting, but we did have Durajaye enter the portal. That was a surprise. We may still hear about somebody entering the portal. It has closed, but we have a day or two after closing before people who got in might be announced. We do have a coaching search coming up to replace Dante Wright. I will be following that. I will give a little more thought to some of the questions I asked tonight, see if I come up with more answers or thoughts. And in my last live stream, in the recording of Coming Attractions about the live stream, I asked people for suggestions for video subjects, and I got some very good ones. I got some that I will be working on, either as the person suggested or working out of that, coming up with some ideas. There are some that are very interesting subjects that I will not be doing because they would take a 10-person staff and several weeks of work. And I don't pay myself enough to do that. I don't pay myself anything because this is still a non-monetized channel. We're still about 700 subscribers away, which of course means please subscribe, please comment, please tell your friends, please give the thumbs up. Please remind me to say that earlier because by this time, most people aren't watching. I will have to see about inserting something, I guess. But I do appreciate those who have dropped in tonight. Clearly, we are not going to be getting any special guests. I will try again later. I know Jordan has said that he will join me sometime when his schedule permits, but it appears that his schedule is still a little crazy. That's one of the things I mentioned at the beginning, talking about what we learned from the games. And the Pitt game, we learned that we can win without Greene. Marchiol was not amazing in the essentially 2 full games he played, but he was good. He made some mistakes. Now the Texas Tech game, the weather was crappy for at least half the game. When the weather cleared and West Virginia needed the drive, Marchiol was good enough to get it done. Was a good drive or a couple of good drives when the weather cleared. I thought he would improve a bit more by this season. We don't know where he stands now. In the bowl game, he ran. So And it was just sort of, well, if we get a first down, we do. And if we don't, we don't. Big deal. So I think he will come on. I suspect that he has come along significantly since we saw him against Pitt and Texas Tech. But part of the question is also, how much will Greene improve? He needs to improve. He's not good enough. He showed what he might be if he corrects 2 or 3 relatively small problems, but they are small problems that can have a big impact. He can throw a touch pass. He's done it. He forgets to do it. He still gets excited, and a lot of things are not in his muscle memory that should be. And all of that goes back to high school, when he was not attending camps. I will be doing a video essentially called the Garrett Greene story. Sort of not a lot of detail, but how he got here, why it took this long, and why hopefully for Marchiol maybe it won't take as long, since he did come in with a better foundation. I do hope we get some scoring margins next year that allow the backup quarterback more time earlier in the game. We did not provide enough of that this year, and we need to do that. But well, I appreciate the folks who came by tonight, especially those who hung around for extended time. I appreciate those who made comments, questions, that sort of thing. It certainly helps. I will be working on a number of videos between what I thought of and what people suggested. I have enough to work on for a while, which does not mean don't don't make suggestions. I like suggestions, preferably polite ones, but well, sometimes I deserve the other type as well. Sometimes I don't deserve it, but I still get it. Who knows? It's kind of dependent what I get done when. Got some things kind of slowing me down. I hope to get that straightened out. If so, I will be doing at least 1 video a week. Hopefully, I'd like to continue doing at least 2 videos a week until I, potentially do run out of subjects, and we'll try to make things up. We should have portal news coming from time to time. I'll try to keep up with that. And some of the things that are, I'm also going to do a discussion of the defense, and why it might be called a 3-1-2-1-4. I lost track of how many I counted, but it is an interesting defense, and I think it is changing. I think it's going to continue to change in some interesting ways that I think they are refining. I think some of it was intentional change. And I think they've also been making changes based on what works. They didn't necessarily mean to have Floyd playing the way he did, but since he did, I think they are going to, adapt in the future to use that. Timothy, you are young at 57. I remember being 57. It was several gray hairs ago, but I was there once. I don't expect to be there again necessarily. But I will try to continue the passion. It has been a pleasure to actually be able to talk about it. I'm, stuck in southwestern Indiana, which is a pretty far distance from Morgantown. And I do not have people around here that I can bump into regularly and, have these sorts of conversations. So I'm glad you guys, give me the opportunity. And I do like to talk. This runs in the family, and I got the genes 100%. TJ Crandall looks to be absolute top quality. He may be as good as Beanie Bishop this year, and we have him for 3 years. Bishop, himself, he's, it was, hey, kind of wished he had come to West Virginia earlier, and imagine what he would have done with more time in the system. But of course, it's also, well, he had that time at Minnesota. Did it prepare him more to make the leap? We don't know. Probably would have meant more chances returning punts, because heaven knows we needed that before. And given the chance, it looks like he's special, and that might get him into the NFL. Or he'll get into the NFL for spring, for training camp. This might get him to stick. And I do wish him luck. Crandall, barring something we don't know, is going to be very, very good. And I think he's going to be one who can drop down into the nickel spear combination and do a lot of damage there. Overall, the defense next year is going to be a lot more versatile. We've heard that from the coaches for years. They have been working on it. They want to bring in players who are versatile. They want to take the players who are here and make them versatile. Most, there's only a couple of guys on the line that they said, no, they're just going to play this position and not move around. I think Lockhart was one of those, so he's gone. So we may see more movement on the defensive front. We have, how many of the guys they're bringing in for the defensive backfield this time are just listed as defensive backs? We don't know if they're going to be corner or safety. Which safety? They're going to move around a ton. And they're better at doing it. Even when they're lined up, you won't know which safety is cat or free. So you won't know which way they're going to move. And that is going to shake a lot of quarterbacks up. It's a level of deception that they haven't managed here. And they really weren't even doing it before. It hasn't been as much of the psychology as it was under Castile. And, the 3-3-5 is not the same, but it's a similar type of defense. And it relies on pressure and deception more than anything else. And I don't think the deception has been there. I used to love, the number of times with the 3-3-5 that a quarterback dropped back and threw a pass right to the defender because they did not expect him to be there. And that's the point. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And glad you made it here. I do think there's some good stuff to watch in the unlive version of the performance. So, you can make some comments there. Appreciate that. Yeah. I'm excited about all of it. And I'm at an age where I just enjoy getting excited. So, yeah, but man, it again, barring injuries, things can always go wrong. But if we get a decent break next year, it's going to be a heck of a year. We would have had a great defense this year. I mean, we would have had a very good defense if Lathan hadn't gotten injured. A couple of improvements on the injury front for defense, and it would have been a top 25 defense, I think. There was a lot of good stuff happening, some good, hardworking players. The coaches were just having to do no, I think the coaches had to get creative, and I think that's going to help next year. I think some of the things they were forced to come up with this season are going to make the defense better next season and make the coaches better. I think Brown emphasizes continual learning. I think it's something he looks for in the coaches that he hires. And I think we have seen it. We haven't seen the full results because there have been so many problems they've had to work through. But yeah, next year, oh man. If I had a time machine, people say, if you had a time machine, what year would you go to? Well, it would be 2024, but it would be late August 2024. But I like to think maybe I've learned enough that if I had a time machine, I would just disassemble it or pack it away in case of emergency. But there's a lot of stuff I want to see between now and then. Watching this team develop is part of the fun. And I don't think I would have appreciated that 10, 20 years ago, or not nearly as much. But it is, well, of course, 10, 20 years ago, you couldn't watch them develop unless you lived in Morgantown. That's one of the joys of the internet. I see more of the games now than I ever would have. And I can watch replays. I can analyze plays. I can do all sorts of things. Well, it is getting near 8:30 Central Time, and I am on Central Time. That makes it time to go down and medicate some of the cats. Even if one of them is currently curled up here purring on the keyboard, I'm surprised he has not managed to change any of the settings. Well, we've been here an hour and 23 minutes, and we just reached our peak number of viewers. I appreciate the folks who have come in late. Let me just check. So, nope, I don't see. Just thought I would check and see if Jordan or Coos had entered the waiting room, but they are not there. Hopefully, well, I guess, if they came in and I didn't see them, they would have let me know. But I will try to get both of them on in future live streams. I find their perspectives interesting. I don't always agree with them, but we have different methods and different perspectives. That's what I find particularly fun. And that's also part of why I got into this, was I thought there was a niche for my way of looking at things. But, we each fill different niches, which is also why we can go on each other's shows and have different shows and not step on each other's toes. So I appreciate having all of that out there. And of course, I watch their shows and try to come up with ideas based on what they had to say. Um, so I will be back. I will eventually have a special guest or two. And in the meantime, I think I am going to sign off and thank everybody for being here. Before I sign off, for those who are still here, is there a time and or day that works best for the live streams? I've been trying to find that. I don't know if I'm still starting a little too early for some people, and that's why we finally peaked. I thought doing a coming attractions video would help. Well, if it helped, I would have been pretty bad off without it. So, but anyway, let me know what you think. Let me know what I can do to make the live streams and other videos better. Got the lighting a little bit better on here tonight. Still got some glare, but I'll keep trying. I'll keep talking, and I will see you later. So long.